Welcome back to the Human Perspective. We're continuing to bring you the voices of disabled people from the United States and around the world. Today we are in Chicago, Illinois at Access Living, which is one of the first 10 federally funded centers for independent living in the United States. We are speaking with advocacy leaders. Access Living, like other centers for independent living in the United States, is governed and staffed by a majority of people with disabilities. Joining us today is Candace Coleman. Welcome, Candace. Candace is the Community Development Organizer for Youth with Disabilities. She organizes Access Living's youth advocacy group called Advanced Youth Leadership Power, which focuses on anti-bullying, school-to-prison pipeline, restorative justice, police brutality, deinstitutionalization, and disability justice. For the past 13 years, she's been organizing young people so they can influence business and political leaders, shape policy, and become leaders themselves. Candace has spoken around the country at conferences, schools, and other events about disability identity, inclusion, and diversity. She believes that young people shape the future of how our world is going to advance. Candace also believes in engaging young disabled people as early as 6 years old in order to help develop disability pride, which will help them to no longer feel ashamed of their disability and recognize how their unique characteristics making disability no longer a taboo subject. Eventually, she hopes to bring her current work to youth and youth programmers around the world. Welcome, Candace.
Thank you.
So, Candace, how long have you had your disability?
I've had my disability all my life, but I didn't develop my disability identity until I was about 25.
So why was that?
I got introduced to this organization called Access Living as a young adult, seeking help and support with trying to get employment for myself as a young person with a disability.
So you had graduated from college.
I did. I was a year out of college looking for employment. Most people's like, in 6 months you'll have a job. It didn't work out that way for me.
Were you experiencing discrimination?
That's what it felt like, which made me seek what services and support I could get connected to in order to get employment.
So when you came to Access Living, what happened to you?
When I came to Access Living, it completely changed my perspective of the world. Because in my community, I was one of 2 people who was recognized as having a disability. And so I was always the one trying to hide because I experienced people like look at me strange or speak negatively, assuming that I did things or couldn't do things.
Do you have cerebral palsy?
I do.
Mm-hmm. And do you have, your gait is not exactly like other people's gaits.
Right.
So did you experience bullying when you were growing up?
Absolutely, I did. Because I experienced like gait issues or because I was kind of quiet, people will bully me to see if I could fight, or people will bully me as like a butt of a joke if like boys liked me or not. So it was a traumatic experience growing up.
So you felt disempowered?
I definitely did.
So what got you interested in working with youth?
So I've always wanted to work with youth. I love like seeing new ideas sparked from young people learning new things. And so I was in school for a nonprofit to actually influence young people through music.
And then you came to Access Living and...
So I came to Access Living. I was considered a youth here because I was under 30. And I got involved with the youth advocacy group, and we were working on issues of deinstitutionalization, where there was a facility that had young people with disabilities in it, but they were dying from neglect, and we wanted to shut it down.
So the group that you've helped establish here, tell us a little bit about what it does.
So our group, Advanced Youth Leadership Power, also known as AYLP, what we do is we develop young people's voices in their disability identity and use that voice to do systems change campaigns around the issues of bullying, restorative justice, police brutality.
So tell us about some of the issues that came up as your group was meeting.
One of the major issues that came up when I first started was bullying. We had some young people in the group who had been well out of school, in their transition age, and they still had their self-esteem of when they were getting bullied out in the world now, and it truly impacted like how their moods were, how they responded to people, and how they really couldn't get past certain barriers in order to reach their goals. And so we took their experience and empowered them to make change. So we were actually in the middle of creating the anti-bullying policy.
Mm-hmm. How did the issue of police brutality come up?
So a few years after we did the anti-bullying initiative, we were focused deeply in the school-to-prison pipeline.
Explain a little bit about what that means.
So that means that in the school system, there were policies that dealt with disciplinary actions. But in our culture, instead of having a disciplinarian person who was just within the school, they had actual police officers in the schools, and so students were getting arrested for minor infractions. And so we wanted to change that because we found out statistically that a lot of people who were in the juvenile detention center were people who had disabilities, and they were coming directly from out of school.
What kinds of disabilities?
Invisible disabilities, emotional disabilities, mostly mental health.
Mm-hmm. So how is the group working on some of those issues?
So our group, a few years ago, we have various members who are a part of our different communities around Chicago. And so we had a young man in our group whose cousin was killed by the police. And it related to us so much because his cousin was a person with a disability. And
what was his disability?
He had autism. And so due to medical recommendations, it was told that if he had a crisis, that his family should call the police. But unfortunately, the 10th time that they showed up, it was fatal when he was killed.
And so what has the group been doing since then?
So initially, the group, we've just been raising awareness. In the light of the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of victims of police brutality were coming up, and a few of those victims were people with disabilities. And so we were noticing a trend. But what we couldn't find was the actual data. So like all these news stories would come out about people with disabilities, but then the data references wouldn't match up. So our group has been trying to, one, create a database ourselves of what's already out there, but two, find a way upon which we could impact the data that doesn't exist, but we know that it's happening on a frequent level. And so we know that police brutality is happening frequently around the country.
And what is some of the work that you're doing personally, as well as people in the group, around issues of hate crimes, police brutality? You could briefly explain some of that.
So last year, after raising awareness in Chicago, there's been earlier this year there was a case of a young man with a disability who was tortured on Facebook, and that crime was deemed a hate crime. And so it raised awareness about lack of statistics in the areas of how people report hate crimes and what was actually happening to people as it pertains to hate crimes. And so we're in the middle of investigating what that looks like for young people, because instances such as bullying, like that could be a hate crime, depending on what you do to a person. And so raising awareness about what would be labeled a hate crime and how to report on it.
So are you and people in your group and Access Living and others working with the police?
No, we're not working with the police directly. We're working with more policymakers, people with lived experience, and community organizations who want to change in those areas.
And getting disability to be a part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
So if there was a message that you wanted to give to our audience about what they can be doing to engage in this subject, what would it be?
Be open-minded, and if we're going to really be true to modeling what a diverse world looks like, we need to be putting disability identity at the forefront of that. Because regardless of what community you come across, you'll always find a person with a disability, and we need to be modeling how we shape our world to reflect that.
Thank you very much, Candace. Unfortunately, once again, our time is up. We would like to thank you very much, and we'd like to thank our audience for joining us today. Please continue the discussion in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Human Perspective, and hit the like and share button on this video. Thank you for joining the Human Perspective, and we look forward to our next discussion.